Beneath the glittering dust of soaring numbers on electronic stock boards, amid the mesmerizing glow of gold bars quietly locked away in vaults, and under the cold, impersonal announcements of newly issued tax policies, there is an invisible hand silently controlling it all. That hand is inflation. People chase stock market waves, rush into gold frenzies, and brace themselves against new tax regulations, as if each of these were separate stories, but the truth is different. They are all pieces on the same chessboard, a game where the most skilled player is inflation itself. A silent force, yet powerful enough to rewrite the fate of the global economy. Are you ready to step into this maze of hidden mechanisms, where every trail ultimately leads back to a single sentence? Welcome to Unsaid Truths, a place where you will hear the truths society would rather keep hidden. Gold. Domestic gold prices. What is really happening? Gold prices are not simply the result of supply and demand. They are part of a political and monetary game where financial power, capital control, and macro-level calculations determine the true value of this asset. In certain economies, gold is not merely gold. It becomes a tool for controlling capital flows, protecting the financial system, and reflecting the unspoken directions of state monetary policy. First, why are domestic gold prices in these economies often significantly higher than global gold prices? In a fully free market, domestic gold prices should closely track global prices because gold can move freely and any price gap would quickly be arbitraged away. Yet in reality, in some countries, a large and persistent gap between domestic and global gold prices has become the norm, lasting for many years. The core reason lies in the state's desire to control the supply of gold. When a central bank controls or monopolizes gold imports, it gains the ability to regulate supply in order to maintain prices at a preferred level. If gold imports were fully liberalized, increased supply would quickly push domestic prices down toward global levels. But when supply is restricted, gold becomes scarce, prices rise steadily, and no longer reflect true global supply and demand dynamics. Restrictions or bans on gold exports further prevent price gaps from correcting themselves, because gold is not allowed to flow outward to rebalance the market. As a result, the domestic gold market gradually turns into a policy-designed market, rather than one governed by natural market laws. Not only gold, but foreign exchange rates in these economies are often tightly managed as well. If exchange rates were fully floating, a weakening domestic currency would cause global gold prices, when converted into local currency, to rise even further. But when central banks control exchange rates, domestic gold prices are kept within an isolated price zone, detached from the global market. Within that zone, gold is no longer just a precious metal. It becomes a form of shadow currency, directly reflecting how the state operates its financial and monetary policies. Second, behind the control of gold, what is the state truly aiming for? Gold is not merely a safe haven asset. In certain economies, it is also used as a mechanism to regulate capital flows and protect the financial system by limiting the outflow of capital abroad. If domestic gold prices matched global prices, people could easily buy gold and move their wealth overseas quickly and legally. But when domestic gold prices are pushed far above global levels, anyone attempting to move wealth abroad through gold must accept a significant loss in value. That price gap functions as a form of hidden tax, making capital flight costly and unattractive. The next objective is to guide capital back into the banking system. When gold prices are anchored at high levels, many people reconsider holding gold and instead choose to deposit money in banks, helping the financial system maintain stable liquidity. Those who continue to hold gold must accept the risk of wide spreads between buying and selling prices, making gold less attractive for short-term speculation. If domestic gold were cheap and closely aligned with global prices, large speculative players could easily create price waves, manipulate markets, and destabilize the financial system. That is why, when central banks control gold prices by limiting supply, speculation becomes more difficult, as wide price gaps reduce gold's appeal to large players. At this point, gold prices are no longer just about supply and demand. They become signals of economic policy. Whenever domestic gold prices rise abnormally compared to global prices, it often signals that monetary policy is entering a transitional phase, especially when liquidity is being injected more aggressively into the economy. This is monetary easing. When governments want to stimulate economic growth, they increase money supply, lower interest rates, weaken the domestic currency, and people begin pouring money into gold. Gold prices surge due to inflation fears, as gold is used as insurance against currency devaluation. At the same time, administrative restructuring programs and economic realignment policies can also shift capital flows. When capital is guided away from gold and into real estate, equities, or public investment projects, gold prices may stabilize or adjust slightly. Conversely, if restructuring progresses slowly or proves ineffective, gold prices may remain elevated or rise further. During periods when an economy is adjusting its overall financial strategy, gold prices may climb sharply while central banks refrain from aggressive intervention. This suggests that policymakers may be allowing gold prices to reflect a transitional phase of the economy. If central banks truly wanted to push gold prices down, they could easily loosen gold import restrictions to eliminate the price gap. But when that does not happen, the question becomes, what comes next? The first scenario, if monetary expansion continues, liquidity in the economy will keep increasing, inflation fears will grow, and gold prices will continue to rise. If interest rates keep falling, capital will flow even more strongly into gold, fueling another price surge. The second scenario, if central banks want to cool gold prices, they can loosen gold import policies. When import rights are expanded, supply increases and price gaps narrow quickly. However, this option always comes with risks. If too much gold enters the market, capital may leave the banking system, reducing liquidity and threatening financial stability. The third scenario, if the economy genuinely recovers, gold prices will gradually self-correct. As capital returns to real estate, equities, and productive business activities, gold will lose its inherent appeal. But this process takes time, and if recovery is slow, gold prices may remain elevated for an extended period. In summary, gold is not a game for beginners. Domestic gold prices are not determined solely by the market, but are deeply influenced by monetary policy, fiscal policy, and state mechanisms for controlling capital flows. Price gaps in gold thus become an implicit economic and political tool, allowing governments to regulate capital, control markets, and protect the financial system. Whether through monetary stimulus or tightening, loosening or restricting gold imports, the landscape can shift dramatically. But central banks always retain the upper hand in this game. Once you understand this, you will no longer see gold prices as mere numbers, but as mirrors reflecting what is truly happening inside an economy. Taxes are no different. Taxation is a high-level art that only a few truly understand. It is not just a way for the state to collect revenue, but a way to control the financial behavior of an entire society. Rigid prohibitions are not always necessary. By simply adjusting a few numbers in tax tables, applying or releasing pressure in certain sectors, the flow of money and the mindset of hundreds of millions of people will automatically change. When taxes are reduced in a specific sector, capital quickly floods in. When taxes are increased, capital withdraws, leaving constrained sectors behind. Lower housing taxes can inflate real estate markets. Higher excise taxes can prompt people to adjust their spending habits. As a result, capital moves almost instinctively, like a crowd guided by invisible signposts. At a broader level, taxation is the primary tool used to direct the flow of money throughout society. When too much money remains in the hands of the public, prices begin to rise and inflation emerges. When capital concentrates excessively in certain asset classes, such as real estate or stocks, asset bubbles form. When money flows beyond national borders, converted into foreign currencies or invested overseas, the domestic financial system faces the risk of losing control. That is why governments are forced to use taxes as a regulating valve, sometimes drawing money back in, sometimes channeling it toward areas deemed necessary. So why is this done, and what is the real objective? First, it is to keep capital within the domestic system, preventing powerful interest groups from accumulating excessive, hard-to-control assets and limiting the free outflow of gold and foreign currencies. At its core, an economy is like a reservoir of water. If too much money, especially strong foreign currencies, leaks out, liquidity dries up and the system gradually loses stability. Measures such as indirect taxes, capital controls, and restrictions on overseas investment are designed to keep money inside this reservoir, protecting the economy from collapsing under external shocks. In other words, this is a way to avoid the crisis traps that global financial forces are always ready to set. Second, taxes are used to regulate public behavior. Governments do not directly forbid you from spending money, but they influence how you spend it in ways the system requires. If individuals were completely free to spend, invest, and speculate without restraint, the entire system would quickly descend into chaos. Through tools such as property taxes, financial transaction taxes, and consumption taxes, governments quietly steer capital toward preferred sectors. When consumption needs to be stimulated, taxes are reduced. When speculation must be restrained, transfer taxes and asset taxes are increased. When capital outflows need to be limited, foreign exchange policies are tightened, ensuring the economic machine continues to operate smoothly and avoiding instability beneath the surface. Third, taxes are used to control economic cycles. No economy grows forever, and no economy declines indefinitely. Regulation is necessary because a completely free system would either inflate asset bubbles beyond control or fall into prolonged recessions, leading to social instability, loss of capital control, and erosion of economic power. That is why governments actively adjust the breathing rhythm of the economy through tools such as tax policy, interest rates, and monetary injection or withdrawal mechanisms. When growth needs to be stimulated, taxes are cut, interest rates lowered, credit loosened, and borrowing and consumption encouraged. When growth must be restrained or asset redistribution is approaching, taxes rise, interest rates increase, credit tightens, and capital is pulled back. Through these deliberate adjustments, the behavior of businesses and individuals is guided in phases, sometimes encouraged to consume, sometimes forced to save, and sometimes even pushed into asset sell-offs during crises. As a result, the economy does not move naturally or freely. It oscillates within a controlled range, designed to keep the system functioning without collapsing unexpectedly. Beyond its direct impact on personal finances, taxation is also a sophisticated tool for shaping collective expectations and financial behavior. You might think taxes are simply a way for governments to collect revenue. That is not enough. Taxation is a high-level art of influencing the human mind. Policymakers understand that people make decisions based on expectations of the future. By adjusting just a few numbers in tax schedules, social expectations shift automatically in the direction they desire. You may believe you are making independent decisions, but not entirely. Changes in taxation quietly plant images of the future in your mind: optimism or pessimism, excitement or fear. You think you are actively choosing where to invest, but in reality, you are reacting to a pre-written game of expectations. In the end, the economy reveals itself as a game that most people do not truly understand they are playing. The economy is not a fair machine. It is a game designed so intricately that most participants never realize they are being pulled into it. Everything has already been programmed through invisible rules. You need to understand those rules because you cannot destroy the system. Either you learn how to operate within it, or you are swept away by it. The key is not to fight the system, but to understand why such a system exists in the first place. Stocks. The stock market is not only a place for investment, but also a mechanism for legitimizing assets and distributing risk to retail investors. It is often called a game for the wealthy, not just because of its profit potential, but because of how it truly operates behind the curtain. Look closely at how this game really works. First, why are stocks considered an ideal tool for legitimizing capital flows? Because of high liquidity, money can move in and out easily, rarely questioned. Asset values fluctuate dramatically. A stock can rise several 100% in a short time and still be considered normal within market logic. In such an environment, financial figures can be polished, expectations inflated, and capital inflows treated as legitimate as long as transactions occur, while the true origin of the money is rarely scrutinized to the end. As a result, the stock market is not just a place to invest, but in many cases functions like a marketplace, where capital is cleaned through layers of complex transactions. So why do governments build and maintain stock markets? One major objective is to help businesses escape debt pressure by offering shares to the public and distributing risk to investors. Initial public offerings become a tool for shifting financial burdens from companies to society. When companies face difficulties, markets can be supported through positive narratives, stimulus policies, or capital injections, pushing stock prices higher and allowing firms to continue raising funds. Many countries also establish legal frameworks to support investment funds, enabling large capital flows to enter markets legitimately and absorb savings from the public. As bank deposits lose value, people are encouraged to move money into stocks, where capital continues to be drawn into the market cycle. During crises, instead of distributing money directly to the public, stimulus packages are often injected into financial markets to support asset prices and rescue large corporations. Large funds, with superior information and resources, can steer markets through news, expectations, and earnings reports, while the benefits flow primarily to elite groups. The remaining risks are transferred to retail investors, those who enter last and bear the losses when cycles reverse. In short, the stock market is not only a place to raise capital, but also a venue for selling debt, distributing risk, and legitimizing capital flows. Companies go public to relieve financial pressure, large capital seeks legal entry points, and retail investors are often the ones most eroded by repeated boom and bust cycles. So why do governments repeatedly rescue large corporations and conglomerates, while many small businesses are left to fail? The answer lies in how this game truly operates. Large corporations are seen as the backbone of the economy. A major corporation is not merely a business, it is a critical link in the entire system. If a large corporation collapses, the domino effect spreads quickly. Hundreds of thousands of people may lose their jobs, triggering social instability. Banks suffer heavy losses because they have extended massive loans to these corporations. The state also loses a major source of tax revenue, as large corporations contribute significantly to public budgets. Investor confidence is shaken, and financial markets risk cascading collapse. Governments cannot allow such a scenario to unfold because the cost would be far greater than simply printing money to provide bailouts. In many cases, rescuing large corporations is effectively rescuing the state itself. If the economy collapses, the stability of the power structure is also threatened. When a company that is too big to fail collapses, the labor market is severely damaged, unemployment rises, and public trust in the system erodes. Banks face the risk of losing billions in loans, forcing governments to intervene to stop the contagion. Without intervention, the entire financial system could spiral into chain defaults. And at the end of that chain reaction, one thing always appears: inflation. A lifetime of monthly wages can still lose to a single wave of inflation. You have a job. You earn a steady paycheck. Congratulations! But don't celebrate too soon. You save money, inflation quietly eats it away. You buy a house. The bank calculates interest so you carry debt for decades, sometimes for life. You invest. There are always players waiting to profit the moment you fall into a trap. So are you actually getting richer, or are you simply being drained, legally? Bitter yet? Not quite. That's why, when you're still struggling, don't rush to hurt one another. Healing costs money. In many cases, corporations only need profit, not necessarily ethics. If you believe that doing your job well guarantees loyalty or recognition, you may be overly optimistic. You are just a number in a human resources spreadsheet. You get yelled at every day. You carry pressure every day. If you quit, the company owes you very little. You work overtime without complaint, saving them the cost of hiring more staff. You work for 10 years, and your salary may barely rise because there is always someone new willing to do the same job for less. So are you building your own career or helping your boss change cars every year? The reason is simple. Companies prefer obedient employees because they are easier to manage and easier to extract value from. Low pay, Head down, afraid of losing the job, afraid to move on. Do exactly what you're told. Ask no questions. Require no further training. Cause no trouble. Work overtime without complaints. Accept bonus cuts. Reduce labor costs. Focus only on your small tasks. Ignore the bigger picture. The kind of employee companies like most is the one who never asks about revenue or profit. The conclusion is simple. Jobs are not scarce. Cheap labor is. If you don't run, someone else will run faster. Society doesn't care how exhausted or stressed you are. It only cares whether you still meet the requirements. If you don't actively develop yourself, the labor market will discard you. If you refuse to work, there are always millions of others ready to take your place. But if you know how to increase your own value, you become the one with choices, not the one being replaced. All markets move in cycles. They rise to a peak, fall to a bottom, and repeat the loop endlessly. If you don't understand the cycle, you will buy at the top and sell at the bottom. Meanwhile, inflation continues to quietly drain your strength. You work your entire life and still can't get ahead. Wages rise slowly while housing prices soar. The more you save, the less your money is worth. Real assets drift further and further out of reach. You work 20 years to buy a house. The bank needs only a few seconds to take it back if you miss a payment. So in the end, who is the real owner? You work hard, but the person changing cars every year is your boss. Your effort grows the company, but whose pocket does the profit flow into? You invest hoping to get rich, but the rich are always the ones selling before you. When good news spreads everywhere, that is usually the moment the sharks have already exited. Money, at its core, is debt. The harder you work, the heavier your debt becomes. And inflation is the tool that ensures escape from that cycle remains difficult. Banks do not directly create money. They control the game. You deposit a small amount. They lend out many times that amount to someone else. You struggle to repay debt while they collect interest steadily. If you don't want to become prey, don't just focus on increasing your income. Understand how the game actually works. If today's podcast gave you something to reflect on, please leave a like, share it, and subscribe to Unsaid Truths to continue this journey together. And now, goodbye, and see you in the next episode.